recording.
Hi, Danita. Thanks
Hello.
for doing this with me today. So basically, the reason that we wanted you to go ahead and keep this food diary was so that we could try and help you make better choices for your oral cavity. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have a few questions about your food diary. So it looks like you drink herbal tea almost every day.
I do.
Awesome.
Yes, that's my morning drink.
Okay. So do you sweeten your tea with sugar?
No.
Okay, that's good. Good. And then it looks like your mid-morning snack usually includes a latte. Is that right?
Yes, about 9.
Okay. So does that latte have milk in it?
Yes, it has 2% milk.
Okay. And then do you add a syrup to it?
Sometimes I do coconut flavoring.
Okay.
It's a sugary syrup.
Yeah. So there is definitely going to be some sugar in the syrup, I would assume. And then it looks like you usually throw some cashew butter in your smoothies. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. With that cashew butter, is it just the ground cashews, or does it have added?
Just the ground up cashews.
Okay, so no added sugar.
No.
Okay. All right. I think those are all my questions about your food diary. So we kind of went over your medical history a little bit, and it seems like you haven't had a cavity in quite some time.
Yes.
And that you haven't had any major health concerns either, correct? No. Okay. And then we kind of talked, and it seems like the last time you had a cavity was when you had braces.
Yes.
Okay, and so
mid-teens.
Okay, that would make sense, because sometimes people's dental hygiene falls off a little because it is more difficult to brush and more difficult to floss, and so cavities do crop up. So that does make sense. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the process of getting a cavity, which is known as the caries process. And so the very first step is that the surface of the tooth has to be compromised or vulnerable. And so we kind of were just going over that with you when we were talking about the braces, that your tooth surface became vulnerable because of the brackets from the braces and not being able to adequately clean your teeth. It can also be impacted by the content or flow of your saliva. And depending on what happens in your mouth, you can end up with a plentiful number of cavity-causing microorganisms in the oral cavity. And this can combine with acid that forms from simple carbohydrates breaking down in your oral cavity. And this is how cavities happen. And everybody has that bacteria in their mouths. It's just in combination with the complex or the simple carbs, you end up with cavities. So next we're kind of going to talk about what a cariogenic food is. And a cariogenic food is something that causes a cavity. And usually foods that contain simple or fermentable carbohydrates cause cavities because they start to break down in your mouth. And this is due to an enzyme that we have in our saliva called salivary amylase. And many of these foods tend to be highly processed. And some examples include candy, soda pop, bread, desserts, chips, pretzels, fruit, all those sorts of sugary, carby kind of things. It's also good to keep in mind that the sugar that is found in dairy products is a cariogenic food. So, for example, when you're drinking your latte, that the sugar found in the milk in your latte is cariogenic. It causes cavities. And then also it is really important to remember that the composition of your food can contribute to cavities. So if something is really sticky or gummy, it sticks to your teeth and can create a situation where you have cavities. So if you're eating gummy bears, things like that. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about non-cariogenic foods, which are also cariostatic. And these are foods that do not contribute to cavities or tooth decay. They keep the pH balance of the mouth normal between 6.2 and 7. And they include pure proteins such as eggs, meat, chicken, fish, fat, most vegetables, and sugar-free gum. And then also there are some foods that are considered neither cardiogenic nor karyostatic, and they're just classified as non-cardiogenic. And this just means that they don't create an environment that causes or inhibits the decay process. And some examples of those sorts of things are sugar-free gum and hard cheeses. So now we're going to talk about your food diary and the things that you went through and sort of highlighted as things that you thought created cavities. So we'll start with Saturday, the first day that you recorded your food intake. And so we were talking about what you threw in your breakfast smoothie, and you didn't mark pineapple or banana. And both of those things would in fact be cardiogenic because they have sugar in them. So even though they're fruits, and they're considered healthy for your body, they can be detrimental to the health of your teeth. And then on that same day, on your dinner, you marked that you thought that pasta was a cavity-causing thing, and you were right. Especially if it's a white, refined pasta, it is definitely going to start breaking down in your mouth. But you missed the fact that the tomato sauce and the eggplant parmesan that you had with your pasta would also be cavity-causing, because most tomato sauces are going to have added sugar, and the breading on your eggplant parmesan, as well as the sauce that was served with it, would be cardiogenic. And then you also had some fried calamari, which would be breaded, and so that breading could be as well. And then the next day that you tracked your food for me was on Tuesday, and for lunch that day you had a bulgur wheat or tabbouleh salad. And although tabbouleh is a complex carb, it is still a carb, so it could, have a detrimental effect on the oral cavity, especially since it was served with tomatoes, and there's some natural sugar in that. And then for dinner, you had some tortilla chips, and processed carbs are definitely going to be cardiogenic, and you did note that, so way to go. And then you also marked that your latte that you had as a snack was probably cardiogenic, and you would be right with the milk that is in your latte as well as the flavored sugary syrup. Yeah. Okay, and then on the last day, on Wednesday, that you tracked, you had a vegetarian chili, and you didn't mark that, but I'm pretty sure that that would be cardiogenic because it has that tomato sauce base, which is going to have some added sugar to it. And then the tortilla chips that you had with it are also going to be cardiogenic, but you marked that. So, and that's just, once again, the processed simple carbs. And then you had the same chips for dinner, and so those are also going to be cardiogenic, as well as the latte that you had again. But you marked all of those, so you were right about that. So we're going to talk about your nutrient intake, and we're going to talk about some of the things that maybe would be a good way to sort of switch things out. And one of the things that you could definitely do as far as increasing your vegetable intake and decreasing your complex carb intake would be to maybe with your snack, like with your hummus that you eat most days, have fresh veggies with it instead of tortilla chips. You could also make sure that with your snack you're having like a yogurt or something like that. But we're going to go a little more into depth with that as we talk about the examples of carbohydrates and things like that. So, the first thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to carbohydrates is the difference between simple and complex carbs. And carbohydrates are really just sugars that are found in two forms, so either simple or complex. So you can differentiate between the two forms by looking at how they break down. So something that's a simple carb, like a sugar or white pasta, or maybe like a saltine cracker or something like that, is going to start to break down in your mouth. Whereas a complex carb takes much longer for your body to break down, and so it keeps you feeling full longer. And the energy that you gain from it is released over time instead of very quickly. Simple carbs are digested very quickly and are stored as glycogen, and so if you don't use that energy becomes fat. Whereas complex carbs are generally found in a natural or unprocessed state and include things like dark green veggies, lentils, beans, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, whole grain breads, and pastas. So a good way to get some complex carbs in your diet would be to switch out your white pasta for whole grain pasta and throw a bunch of veggies in it. Put some kale, put some spinach in your pasta, and that will definitely up your complex carb intake. And then simple carbs are often processed foods such as candy, table sugar, fruit drinks, white bread, corn syrup, and high fructose corn syrup. And those are going to be things that you want to avoid as much as possible. And it is recommended that at least half of your grain intake should come from whole grains and should amount to roughly around 3 ounces per day. And so we're going to talk about some vitamins and minerals now that are essential to our diet. So vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin that is important in the strengthening of bones and teeth. A lack in vitamin C can lead to bleeding gums in the oral cavity, and a severe deficiency can result in scurvy, which leads to issues with bad breath, loose teeth, and issues with the development of the dentin, which is the layer underneath the enamel of your teeth. It makes up the bulk of the tooth, so it's pretty important. However, too much chewable vitamin C can lead to erosion and oversensitivity to the tooth enamel. So if you do take a vitamin C supplement, you want to make sure it's not a chewable one. Good sources of vitamin C include red peppers, citrus fruit, broccoli, tomato, and strawberries. And so according to your nutrient report, you were doing okay on vitamin C, so you wouldn't need to boost your intake too much. But a good way to get some of these things in your diet would be, once again, to switch out tortilla chips for some sliced bell peppers or carrots or things like that when you're having your snack of hummus. The next vitamin that we're going to talk about is actually 2 vitamins. It's part of the B complex. So vitamin B2, which is riboflavin, and vitamin B3, which is called niacin. So riboflavin is also a water-soluble vitamin that's necessary for cell growth and red blood cell production. And deficiencies can cause angular chelosis, taste loss, halitosis, cracking of the lips, and a sore throat. And then outside of the oral cavity, it can cause delayed wound healing and burning eyes. So good sources of B2 are yogurt, clams, mushrooms, beef, fortified cereals, and oats. And according to your nutrient report, you seem to be doing okay on B2, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, but those are always good sources to know about. Vitamin B3 is also an essential water-soluble vitamin that's needed for DNA and RNA synthesis, drug metabolism, and the metabolism of red blood cells. So deficiencies in B3 can cause angular chelosis, stomatitis, mucositis, nug, and a bright red tongue. And then in non-oral concerns, deficiencies can lead to dementia, dermatitis, and even death. So we want to make sure that we have enough of niacin. And that is actually a vitamin that you seem to be a little under what you're supposed to be having. So because you are a vegetarian, and I don't know if we mentioned that earlier, but you do have, certain things that you don't eat. And a lot of those things include the sources where you're going to get a lot of niacin, like meat, fish, poultry, stuff like that. But you did mention that you do occasionally eat eggs, so it would be a really good idea maybe in the morning to have an egg or to have a hard-boiled egg as a snack, That would be a good way to get some niacin. And then also just adding dark leafy greens. Just make sure that you're throwing, those greens in with your pasta. Make a side salad with your, like when you're having hummus and stuff like that. Have a side salad with it with some dark green leafy vegetables. The next vitamin we're going to talk about is vitamin D, and this is known as the sunshine vitamin. And that is because it's produced when the rays from the sun hit the skin and allow for vitamin D synthesis in your body. And you only need about 5 to 10 minutes of exposure a couple of times a week. But when it's been raining like it has been, that can be tricky.
Yeah.
So vitamin D is different from the previous vitamins that we talked about in that it's fat soluble rather than water soluble. So it doesn't just flush out when you have too much of it. But it is really important in the absorption of calcium and phosphorus, and that makes it vital in the construction and maintenance of our healthy teeth and bones. So deficiencies can cause issues with bone formation, including rickets, osteoporosis, and osteomalacia, which are all bone diseases that are either, the malformation of the bones or weakening of the bones. In the oral cavity, it can cause enamel and dentin hypoplasia, so we want to avoid a lack of vitamin D. So it can be found in fortified milk, liver, egg yolks, fish, and fish oils such as swordfish or salmon. And so I would say that, like when you're making a smoothie, it would be a really good idea to maybe throw some fortified vitamin D milk in there. You could make sure that you're having a yogurt or something like that if it's fortified with vitamin D, or occasionally just having a snack and have a 8-ounce glass of vitamin D fortified orange juice, things like that. So the next mineral that we're going to talk about is calcium. And I'm sure that you've heard that calcium is important with our bones and teeth. It's essential for the growth in muscle and nerve function and hormone secretion as well. It's crucial in the development and preservation of bones and teeth. So dietary sources include soy products, dairy products like cheese, milk, and yogurt, dark leafy green vegetables, and fortified orange juice. So you're going to want to maybe, what we were talking about earlier, like throwing some milk, or even you could put a Greek yogurt in your smoothie. And that would be a good way to boost that. Or, with your latte in the afternoon, have a Greek yogurt with some fruit. Things like that. Deficiencies cause many of the same bone-related issues that vitamin D deficiencies do, so rickets and osteoporosis, etc. But oral concerns are many. A lack of calcium can cause an incomplete calcification of the teeth, early tooth loss, and increased risk of decay and bone resorption. So you definitely want to make sure that we're getting enough calcium, and that was one of the things that in your dietary would print out that you were lacking. So we definitely want to bolster that in your dietary intake. One of the last minerals we're going to talk about is phosphorus, and it's a mineral that's found mainly in our teeth and bones. It's necessary for the pH balance and the filtering of water or waste from the kidneys and muscle contraction. Deficiencies in phosphorus are rare, and you actually, I do believe, have plenty of phosphorus in your diet. But an overabundance of phosphorus can lead to the calcification of kidneys and cartilage. So you do just want to make sure that you're getting enough, but not too much. In the oral cavity, issues with phosphorus intake can lead to tooth loss, decay, bone resorption, and a lack of calcification of the teeth. And it can be found in protein-rich foods such as almonds, liver, plant seeds, meat, fish, poultry, and some dairy products. So for you as a vegetarian, I would say, eating a handful of almonds, as part of a snack would be really a smart way to do it. Or maybe even switching out almond butter instead of cashew butter with your smoothie. That would be a good one. So we are now going to look at the food group breakdown of your food diary and just sort of discuss where that played out. According to what you ate for the 3 days, you're a little under for whole grains. So we're going to want to bolster the whole grains and then kind of minimize some of those refined grains. You were kind of under as a whole in vegetables. So you weren't getting enough dark green, red, orange, beans, peas, or starchy vegetables. So, that's another area where it's like just throwing them in your pasta, making a side salad to go with something, throw them in your smoothie, eat them with hummus, Just make sure that you're getting enough of those veggies every day, because that's where the bulk of your vitamins and minerals come from. Because, like you were lacking vitamin A, and that's like, eat those carrots with the hummus. They'll get you some vitamin A. You were okay with fruits, although you could probably eat a little more. Milk and dairy, you were okay. It said you were lacking in seafood, but as a vegetarian, you're not going to be eating that. So just making sure that you're eating heart healthy fats from like either like an omega-3 or an omega-6
Like a supplement.
yeah,
Okay.
or like a fish oil, or making sure you're getting lots of healthy nuts and stuff like that. And you do eat seeds in your chia seeds and flax seeds, which are great in your smoothie. And then I think that's about it. We're gonna wrap it up. Do you have any questions for me at all?
No, this was very informative. I like the different alternatives for substitutions. It's good to
Okay.
know.
Excellent. Well, thanks once again for doing this with me.
Of course.
All right.